Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Two topics for this video. Actually, that's one topic with two subtopics. One, Trump's team receives Ukraine's, be careful with the words that I'm going to use here, Ukraine's peace deal terms and awaits Moscow's conditions. That's the first one. And the other one is Russian foreign minister reveals Moscow's demands for next round of talks with Ukraine. So did you sense the difference? Of course you sense it. It's too obvious. The first guys are just peace deal terms, and the Russians have conditions and demands. Got it? That's how you make the news. Why? You already want to give the public, the reader, an idea who's good and who's bad. Right? And let's use as a third little topic, the way the media, being related to the first two articles, the media tries to pin us against one another, and that is the Europeans. Again, for the third time. And the media, I think, has its own owners, and the owners are of a certain group. Let's start with the first topic, which is Ukraine's peace deal terms. Ukrainska Pravda. Trump's team receives Ukraine's peace deal terms and awaits Moscow's conditions. All right, this guy, Keith Kellogg, just so you know, he's the American envoy to Ukraine. The Russians did not want to talk to this guy. That's why we have the Jewish foreign minister pretty soon, I would say Secretary of State of the United States of America, Steve Witkoff, dealing with Putin and with his Jewish counterpart, Zelensky Stein. Don't connect any dots. So, nevertheless, Mr. Kellogg is unwanted. Why do you think he's unwanted by the Russians? Because I think the Russians know that Mr. Kellogg, I don't think he's on the payroll of the Americans. I have no information, but why do they like Witkoff and they don't like Kellogg? Is because Kellogg has two pairs of balls? I don't think so. I think they know that Mr. Kellogg works for the Brits, not for the Americans. That's a good feeling, okay? Let's read and see what the conditions are. Not the conditions, the terms, my bad. Keith Kellogg, President Donald Trump's special envoy for Ukraine that has no access to Russia, has stated that the United States has received Kiev's list of conditions, and now they have conditions, not terms, for ending the war, but is still awaiting a response from Moscow. Slackers. Details. Kellogg reported that during a recent conversation between Trump and Kremlin leader, now he's a leader, he's not a dictator today, Vladimir Putin, and I'm quoting, the Russians said they were going to come up with what they call a memorandum. So this is Kellogg. You already understand that this Kellogg is not impartial. He's not United States' envoy in a country. He is that country's striptease guy who's gonna dance in front of whomever and you stick the money in their butt crack. So this is what this guy is doing. His words, now you wonder why the Russians don't want to deal with this guy and they deal with Witkoff. He's Jewish, it's okay, but it seems like Witkoff, is much smoother, as they always are. Not always, but nevertheless. See, going to come up with what they call a memorandum. And I'm quoting, we've got that from the Ukrainian side, and now we need to get that from the Russian side. He said, referring to a term sheet outlining the country's positions. He explained that once the United States receives both documents, they will melt them together. What does this look like? What is not acceptable and what is acceptable? Where can you go to bring it together? Once we, America, does that, right, do that, once we get their terms sheet or memorandum, they will put it together, and then there is going to be another meeting. Kellogg elaborated. He also noted the United States has proposed the Vatican as the venue. That's the Catholic Church, all right? Not the Protestant, not the Greek Orthodox, the Vatican, for the next round of negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. But the Russians didn't want to go there. for obvious reasons, you cocksucker. All right, so let's unpack this a little bit. I have the other one with the Russian terms. So, what do you think the Ukrainian terms are? Well, we already know them. First, Russia has to retreat to 1991 borders. Leave Ukraine as it is. Russia must give reparations to Ukraine so the Western businesses can rebuild with Russian money because they destroyed Ukraine, okay? And the bankers are going to get their profits as well, the Western bankers. Then they would like probably Putin and Lavrov and all those bad dudes in Russia to be tried for war crimes. Not Zelensky. No. The bad guys. Then they probably would like some kind of control of Russia's military. They're too strong. They need to cut that. Then they will demand that Ukraine can have its own military, will be part of NATO and the European Union. What else? Huh? I think that would be, they want to make sure they got guarantees, that means NATO troops over there, so the Russians will not again invade Ukraine in their imperialistic mind. So the Russians are trying to go towards the West when the West came way to the East. The Russians are imperialist, not the Americans. No. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one. Did you know the role America ascribes to itself? Once we receive your thing, and then you receive your thing, we, like a judge, want to put things together, and then we're going to inform the baboons, hey, okay, now listen to Papa here. Motherfucker, you're part of the fight. The Russians allow the Americans to play this role. You know for how long? Until the Americans try to be obnoxious. And then the Russians say, what are you talking about? You are losing in Ukraine, using the Ukrainians. It's you. It's NATO. You're NATO. You are the root cause. But we'll let you do the mediator when actually you're not the mediator. You are the losing side negotiating with us, pretending you're a mediator. You know why? The Russians allow these baboons in charge of us to show their constituency that we're still strong and we still have authority and we're good, we never lose, and so on. America! That's what they try to do. And I said this before, they will make it in such a way that they didn't lose. No, we didn't. No. And I said it, they're going to make it as we are the moderator between the two baboons. When actually I'm the one who's, NATO expansion, then the coup in 2014, and so on. NATO said we're going to invite you to be part of NATO, arming Ukraine, training Ukraine, CIA bases in Ukraine. But hey, we are not part of this. We support the Ukrainians with everything. Without us, Ukraine is dead in 2 weeks. But we're not part of the war. No. It's between you and you. So you understand this little... No, you are part, but the Russians allow you. You know why the Russians allow you? They allow you for the same reason the Russians don't say anything about the American moon landing. The Russians are keeping their mouths shut because the other ones are keeping their mouths shut as well. Okay? You don't know what I'm talking about? Well, do some research on that one. That's why the Russians don't say, bull fucking shit. You've been to the moon how I was in Zimbabwe last month. Okay? I wasn't. So nevertheless, not that I can't, but I wasn't. I can show you a few videos if you want, me somewhere and say, this is Zimbabwe right here, baby doll. Turn that light off. Okay, so that's the first one. Remember, you are not the negotiator here, not the mediator. They let you. Regarding the Vatican. First, the Vatican should have nothing to do with any political stuff. They should talk to the souls with science fiction things, hymns, crosses, but they should not be involved in any fucking political thing. And if you ask me why, I will refer you to the history. Okay, just look into the history and see how. And I'm not bashing the Catholics, the religions in general. You know, in the name of what ideology were committed the biggest, the most numerous crimes on the planet? No, it was not the guys from the Second World War. No, it was not Stalin and the communism. No, it was not Mao Zedong. No, it was not Small Pot or whatever, Pol Pot in Cambodia and so on. It was not that. It was something else in the name of something. It doesn't mean that that thing is bad, but people used it for that, for bad reasons. Remember, okay, Inquisition, for instance, burning people on the stake, heresy, stoning, things like this. All right, you don't understand. Let's go to the second part of the video, which is the Russians' conditions, right? Demands. Ukrainska Pravda, Wednesday, the 28th of May. Russian Foreign Minister reveals Moscow's demands for next round of talks with Ukraine. Excellent, excellent. Where's the memorandum? It's coming. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that in the next round of negotiations with Ukraine, the date of which will be announced shortly, Russia will insist on the repeal of discriminatory laws restricting the Russian language and on Ukraine's non-aligned and non-nuclear status. These guys are very bad. What do you mean discriminatory laws? There are no discriminatory laws in Ukraine against the Russian language. And what do you mean? Ukraine can choose whatever it wants. If they want to be nuclear, they can be if the Americans say so. Americans being the only ones who drop 2 atomic bombs. But somehow they are at the decision table. It's like you have a rapist who's at the decision table. Never punished. But he's going to say, well, yeah, I'm going to, and if you give me that, well, he knows the best. Well, so that means I can't cure anybody or treat anybody for cancer unless I have cancer. Is that the logic here? Oh no, moreover, the United States knows how it is to drop 2 atomic bombs. I heard this argument, my friend, and my balls were like bang, 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 laughing together over there on their little scrotum. Let's go. So here we have a quote from Lavrov. At these talks on May 16 in Istanbul, we insisted on the repeal of these discriminatory laws restricting the Russian language, and we will continue to do so in the next round of direct talks, which we will announce in the near future. Lavrov said that one of the conditions for ending the war for Kremlin is also the neutral, non-aligned, non-nuclear status of Ukraine, which was determined in 1994 in Budapest Memorandum, where the Americans signed, the Russians signed, I think the Brits also signed, the Germans, I think the French, I don't care remember if it was the Germans or not, but nevertheless, and the Ukrainians, which was demilitarization, no nuclear weapons for Ukraine, and Ukraine will be guaranteed its sovereignty will not be infringed by anybody, because otherwise we're going to intervene and help. And now these guys claim, wait, Russia invaded. That means they broke the 1994 Budapest Memorandum. But the Russian says, actually, no. It was, let's go back. The chronology of events always matters. It was actually you guys in 2008 in Bucharest, if you remember, NATO summit, when that baboon, his name is George W. Bush, the illiterate guy. By the way, he was in the Ivy League schools in America, man. He was educated at the creme de la creme. Did you hear the guy talk? Did you hear what he said? That's why for me that was like, so he was at Yale and Harvard, Ivy League schools. I'm not saying they don't do certain things, but why was he over there? Because of the daddy? Oh my God, corruption here? No. My friends, I'm saying this for the baboons in Romania, who in America, man, West, the European Union. Bull fucking shit. They do the same thing as everybody else, a little bit under the cover, all right, and they make it look legal. I mean, you tell me, have you heard the guy? Have you heard Obama? Harvard, okay? And not only, many others. All right, so what do we have here? In 2008, George W. Bush in the summit in Bucharest said, one day Georgia and Ukraine will be part of NATO. And Putin was like, what? Yeah, that's what I said. No, how can you be part of NATO when NATO is clearly a defensive organization? That was an indication to Putin that these guys have no plans on fulfilling their obligations under the 1994 Budapest Memorandum. And they say, well, these were all words. Okay, on just words. What happened in 2014? It was a coup d'etat. That means some traitors. Why are they traitors? Because they overthrew a legitimate government, democratically elected, with the help of foreign agencies. That's why you're a traitor by definition. So that you need to be whatever goes first, okay? So they became the leaders, and the next day, the guys in the West that love democracy, to spread their kind of democracy, and European Union, the baboons in Romania, you hear? European Union, they said, we recognize the new traitors. That's what they did. So that's where they say we're going to be with NATO. So who broke Ukraine's neutrality? The West again. So spare me a river, or Crimea River. Here it is. And this is what he says. I have said many times that the trigger for this conflict, and these guys needs to put this lie, the war unleashed by the Russian Federation in Ukraine, and more broadly the deep security crisis in Europe, was precisely NATO's aggressive expansion eastward over many years. What does that mean? NATO aggressive expansion. Now you can say, wait a minute. So was it not legal for them to expand? Well, let's say it's you and I, right? And let's say we are fighting, boom, 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 bam, bam, bam. And then after that, say, okay, well, stop. Okay, stop. All right, and I say, we're friends now. All right, we're friends now. I will not hit on your wife, okay? I say, okay, no problem. And then I do that. And you say, Emil, what did you do? I said, have I signed anything? And you're going to say, no, but you said you're not going to do this. Have I signed anything? Sucker. That's what the Americans did in 1991 to Shevardnadze, and I think it was Gorbachev as well. Shevardnadze being the foreign minister of of Soviet Union. Shevardnadze being a Georgian, like Djugashvili, Stalin. I like Shevardnadze a lot. By the way, his daughter was at Russia Today, one anchor over there. So what happened there? They lied. They said, remember, in 1991, Mr. Secretary of State of the United States of America. Remember, he said, James Baker, like Boris Becker, he said, if Russia, Soviet Union, whatever the entity was over there, agrees, that means they had something to say. If agrees with the unification of Germany, East Germany and West Germany, then we promise, NATO will not expand 1 inch eastwards towards Russia. And the Russians, like the neighbor, said, yeah, I trust you, Emil, I trust you. And then what did I do? Okay? And then the guy said, the Russians say, wait a second, you expanded 5 times in large NATO. And the guy said, did I sign anything when I said that? That's exactly what I say. Show me where I signed it. No, I said it, but I never signed anything. So next time, do you believe me? You should never trust me again for such a thing. So when you hear anything the Americans say, you say, fuck off, until I'm certain, and not even written. Nowadays, written is 0. I tell you why. Remember when Trump just decided to get out of the negotiations that were already decided by Obama? You know, the deal between Iran and the Europeans and America, signed by legitimate Americans. Trump said, yeah, America signed that with the former administration. Fuck off, man. Do you mean, oh, so if you signed something tomorrow, the next day you can do the same thing again? Yeah. So you tell me when Russians did something like this. Please tell me. And if you tell me, I can give you more about the other guys. All right. So clearly he says NATO's expansion. These are, and I'm telling you what, and you know, what the 4 non-negotiable the Russians have towards everybody. First, no NATO in Ukraine. Out. That means no peacekeeping troops or love-making euphemisms. Nothing like that. First. Second one, Ukraine will not have an army. Third, reality on the front. Our Russians will be and are part of Russia. Zip it. And probably they're going to control what's going on in Ukraine politically. And no Nazi ideology over there. Denazification. These guys say, oh, there's no, what do you mean Nazi? What do you mean? Well, if you ask the Poles will immediately tell you about Stepan Bandera. So, not Antonio Banderas, but Stepan Bandera. And they're going to tell you what these guys build monuments in the name of that guy. Now, it's not for me to say what those guys can worship. But then don't tell me if I say certain things about certain subjects and certain groups that are actually related to the next and the last part. US and Russia clash in public as the Ukraine war heats up. So these are some that want the war to continue. Reuters, for instance. Why? They didn't clash in public. They want to see us fight a third world war. Only us. If you can get China and raise it too, in the meantime, that's great. Because we, the bankers, and not only will reconstruct everything, like the new Marshall Plan. Got it? Who's behind this? Well, I already mentioned the institution. So they like when they try to make it like they clash in public. No, Trump said, oh, well, Putin is playing with fire. And Medvedev said, well, and Putin was playing with fire and bad things could happen to Russia. Could have happened to Russia if it weren't for me. And Medvedev said, the only thing that I see bad things could happen is a World War III. And it's because of you. That's clash in public. No, these guys, again, they play like they're in charge. You're not in charge. You are the, how should I put it, the foundational problem. You have a cracked foundation. These guys. Unless you fix that and the guys in charge of them, you cannot have a stable house. So these guys can say, we do this, you do this, you do this. No, your attitude needs to change. America will not let that go. Why? Why would they? That means they have to produce. That means they have to discuss with people on equal footage. Why would they do that? They use this and that's it. Sanctions, blackmail, threats, regime change, and attacks, invasion. These are the America's four tools from their diplomatic toolbox. That's all they have. After 1991, they dropped everything else, like intelligence, charm, flexibility, things like this. No. Intelligence, I don't know if I mentioned knowledge, all that. They dropped everything. They put baboons who are threatening with sanctions, blackmailing, and then regime changing, and then bombardments. Look at their history in the past, 33 years. Since 1991, look at their history. Do I need to mention Yugoslavia? Do I need to mention Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria? Now they want Iran in the name of, the same guys. And now is Ukraine. Anyway, thank you very much for being with me again today. These guys will not have a peace. They will not make peace like that. They will not make peace. They will not make peace. They don't want to. It's too much profits on both sides. You say, what do you mean the Russians? The Russians will take more land. That's what they will do. Take more land and that's it. If they can. If the other guys decide to get crazy, the Russians will get crazier. With the demands on two sides, you can't have them come and you can't. Anyway, it's like the Palestinians and Israel. You can't. Those guys say, God gave me your lands. The other guys say, you came and took my land. What do you want the Jews to say, the guys from Israel? God did not give us everybody's land? Is that what you want them to say? They will never say that. Whereas the other ones can say, wait, you took my land. It was not your land, it's my land. So how are you going to reconcile this? It's two opposite directions. They can put them together. Do you think they will be able to stay together? No, they need tens of centuries. In order for these guys to start understanding how to live together. You can't. Past is too bloody. Thank you very much for being with me again today. And the ideology is too far apart from one another. The same in Ukraine. These guys, it's either or. I don't see a mixture. And if it's a mixture, it's a temporary fix. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.